Whatever has a name and a form will change, and whatever has no name and no form will never change, because the changeability principle is not applicable on that which doesn't has any form. Your body has a form, a name has been given. You can say, well, even for God a name has been given. But you know what? God is not saying this is my name, but you are saying this is my name. So you have adopted the name which was given, but the existence isn't adopting whatever the humans are imposing on it. So all names of God are actually not God. Because all names have been made or created or thought by some human mind. So that particular mind chose that particular name, and then the religion or the sect continued. So if we go pre-Krishna times, nobody was saying Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Japo, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Japo. Let's chant name of Krishna, because this name was not there. When that form appeared, then the name appeared. Just 550 years ago, Ekumkar word was not ever used. This word is creation of Sri Guru Nanak Dev. So 550 years ago, this name was not prevalent. This name was not existing. Nobody was saying focus and simran and chant and dhyan on Ekumkar. All the sages of Sant Mat, beginning from Sant Charandas Maharaj, Sant Dadu Dayal, Sant Rajab, and so many more, the list goes on and on, they started using the word Satnam. And even before them, it was Kabir Sahib who used the word Satnam. Now many people do not know this. They think Satnam word has been given by Guru Nanak, but the truth is this word was already being used because Kabir Sahib had connotated this word, Satnam. And all his Upadesh, his teachings, will have multiple times this word. And remember, Kabir Sahib was much before Sri Guru Nanak Dev. There is a sect in Rajasthan. They are called Satnam Sakhi. Their whole sect is called Satnam Sakhi, and they have no relationship with Sri Guru Nanak Dev. And yet, their sect is called Satnam Sakhi. Sakhi means teaching, Sakhi means a couplet. So if we go, say, in 8th century, what was name of God? We'll have to go further behind. Now, the time period, what the Britishers have interfered into Indian history, and they really mangled it up and distorted it up. So what figures we have and what all Indians would like to believe, they are actually not true. We were told that Ram happened 8,000 years ago and Krishna happened round about 5,600 years ago. But the truth is, this is a much, much older date. And had it been some Indian fellow saying this, everybody would have said, oh no, he's biased and he's a fool and he's religiously biased and he has no understanding and this and that. They're just gossiping, they're just rumor mongering. All kind of abuses would have gone to this person who would have said that Krishna happened 35,000 years ago. It is that by chance, or say by luck, the people who were doing a research study on ocean, the Indian Ocean and Arabian Sea, so their divers went deep down to understand, the oceanography. And what they found? There was a whole city submerged in ocean. So they brought few pieces out, and then with all the techniques available, they did the study that how old this piece would be, and then they marked it. It is at least 35,000 years ago. And after doing the very intensive research and survey of this whole area, the National Geographic team pronounced that this is the city where Sri Krishna lived his last years. That is the city of Dwarka. Like with the global warming and the change of the ocean structure, it is lapping up the land. So something similar must have happened in those times. So this city where Krishna lived with his wives and children, and he was king of this city, the city was submerged. And what we saw from the bank is just an ocean. And so many years have passed, and then the history which was being taught in our Indian schools was speaking big, thick lies. Teachers are teaching this. Professors are teaching this. And giving chronological dates that Krishna happened some 5,600 years ago. But here the Dwarika, the structure, is the evidence. This all happened good 35,000 years ago. But if we say, when Krishna was not there, we go much, back, then the Sri Rama was there. We have our Puranas, which give the history to us. Right? In which Manvantar, in which Yuga, who was there? And it's not only about Ram and Krishna. They have the list of all the kings who ruled. The Bhagavad Puran is like an historical text. It carries the name of who's who was father of, like Krishna, then who was father of, all the predecessor kings of Rama, the names are there. And it begins all from Ikshvaku. And who was father of Ikshvaku? So if you wish to know more history, please read Bhagavad Puran. You will get to know all about it. But unfortunately, what was being taught in schools and colleges is not true. But my subject is, when Sri Rama was not born and Krishna was not born, say good 40,000 years ago, what was name of God? So if we go into those older times, then the worship of Vishnu and worship of Shiva was very prevalent, and worship of Devi was very prevalent. So oldest temples in this country would be of either Vishnu or Shiva or Devi. So kind of the trend stops here. But if you say, when was Vishnu born? What is birthday of Mahadev? Now this is something which might shock your small brains. And the truth is this, it's a factual information, that it is not just one Vishnu. There had been many, many Vishnu. And there had been many, many forms of Mahadev also. And it is not that something which is not written by the sages who wrote Shiva Puran or those who wrote the Vishnu Puran. Actually, Vishnu Puran, Shiva Puran, and the other 16 Puranas are written by just one author, and the name is Rishi Vedavyas. But if we say, even when Vedavyasa was not born, and even when this particular Mahadeva and Vishnu was not there, what was the name? Now what I wish to establish is that in this period of thousands of years, many new names were given to God. And Ram and Sri Krishna in various places in their life have been talking about it to their disciple, like Ram is talking to Sita in Chitrakoot. That what you see, Sita, is a form of Maya, and what I am is beyond the visibility of your eyes. The eyes cannot see who I am. It's a beautiful conversation which happened in between Ram and Lakshman. And then there is a beautiful conversation which happened on question of Lakshman. It is said that Ram chose to be silent and Sita gave all the teachings. But unfortunately, people have lost, we have lost those beautiful scriptures where Sita is talking like a guru to Lakshman and teaching him what Parabrahma is, who Parabrahma is, what God is, what illusion is, what Maya is, and she is speaking. And actually Lakshman asked this question, Devi, how come you are answering and Ram is not? I ask question from Ram, but you are answering. And then Sita says, at the moment, he is the Parabrahm, and Parabrahm cannot speak. I am Maya, and Maya has all the tools and senses and vehicles, meaning the mind, intellect, the consciousness, and the tongue to speak, and the body. So I am the Maya, and he is the Parabrahm, so Parabrahm cannot speak. Because if Parabrahm speaks, then Parabrahm is not Parabrahm. So to answer your very eloquent question, I am the only one person who can answer it, not Sri Ram, so he has to be quiet. The beauty of this country had been that irrespective of the gender, male or female, we had great enlightened beings, but somehow the history has forgotten the greatness of those women masters, the greatness of Sita, the greatness of Parvati, the greatness of Devi Uma. And what we are familiar with, or we have been listening, maybe because all the priests and the Brahmins had been, functionally more males were there. Hence they chose to maybe glorify more about what males said and less about what woman rishi. In Sanskrit, for a woman rishi is rishika. So what these rishikas spoke or taught somehow never got that glory. But when they were there, they had all the respect and all the glory. Gargi, Madalasa, Maitreyi, these were great women. These were masters. And in present times, if I say, not long ago in Maharashtra, Sant Namdevji, who was Guru of Sant Namdevji? It was a woman master, Muktabai, sister, younger sister of Sant Gyaneshwar. She was Guru of Namdev. So names have been given. In every civilization, in every culture, in every language, there has been a name given to God. But question is, did God accept or reject that name? Or just the humans accepted it and made it popular? Right? It's very petty example, but I'll still give. Most of you do not know what this body carries the name. What is name of this? Everybody knows it, Guruma. It is only my Guru who gave me the name, or my passport which carries my name. The name which was given to this body. But what is prevalent name? Guruma. And now when somebody asks me, what is your name? I am befuzzled, bamboozled. What should I say? The name which is prevalent, the name which is popular, or the name which my Guru gave? Because nobody speaks that name. Hence even I have forgotten what is the name. And recently I met some lady and she said, what is your name? I said, I know you. I said, yeah, okay. And then she says, what is your name? I said, you can call me anything. You can call me anything, doesn't matter. I'm happy to meet you, you are happy to meet me, so why bring names into it? Because names can be given, names can be adopted, names can be changed, and names are actually meaningless. The truth is the existence. So in the Upanishad, say Manduk Upanishad, or Katho Upanishad, or Mandukya Upanishad, or Ishavasya Upanishad, or Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. In all Upanishad, not even a single verse is there. Why? Because Upanishad is talking about the existence directly, and is talking about the disciple, and is explaining what your mind is, what your consciousness is, what this Jagrat Swapna Sushupti is, what is the Jiva, the individual soul, and who is Astitva, meaning who is Parabrahma, what is Atma. So Upanishad is just talking all fundamental minus all nonsense. There is no nonsense over there. In Purana you have history. In Purana you have astrology. In Purana you have poetry. In Puranas you have prose. In Purana you have a storytelling rishi. But in Upanishad you will not have all this. Straight hitting the bullseye. And I am a no-nonsense person. That's why I always have been an ardent student of Upanishad and not Puranas. Although Puranas have its own glory and its own beauty and the importance is definitely there, but for self-realization, meaning for you, it is not important to know too much what Krishna did, or what were names of his wives, or how many children he had, or how many brothers he had, or where he played, or where he went to school. What is important is what Krishna spoke to Arjuna. That wisdom is important.